Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Friday, November 2nd, 2018. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news. And in the second edition of Advice Corner with Chris Evangelista, we're going to get a little bit of parenting advice. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta. And joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film writers Hoai-Tran
Hey, everyone.
and Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
You excited for Advice Corner?
I am. I'm a little nervous. I don't want to give out bad advice.
I'm excited. This is my first time witnessing Advice Corner in person, so it's a momentous occasion.
Okay, well, we will get to that after the news. Let's start off with the news that we might actually have the titles for all the Avatar sequels. HT, could this be true?
Well, according to a report from the BBC News, this might be true. So, BBC News reports that it has seen documentation containing plans for the future of the Avatar franchise that references 4 specific projects. They go by the title Avatar, The Way of the Water, Avatar, The Siege Bearer, Avatar, The Tolkien Rider, and Avatar, The Quest for Eywa. It doesn't specifically state that these titles are the titles for the sequels, but because there are 4 titles and there are 4 upcoming Avatar sequels, it's easy to make the leap. But we'll take this with a grain of salt, or rather a healthy heaping of salt, because it's possible that these titles could be in reference to potential Avatar video games, Avatar AR experiences, or they're possibly just placeholder titles for the films to use during production, which is a common practice especially for productions that have a high level of secrecy.
Yeah. So wait, so this BBC article doesn't say what these titles are for?
No, it just says that it's about the future of the Avatar franchise, and it's from this documentation that they got a peek of.
Now, personally, I'm hoping that these titles are not the films. These sound like, I don't know, sound like maybe VR experiences or video games or something. Chris, what do you think about these titles?
They're bad, especially Avatar The Seed Bearer, which I can't imagine like a big blockbuster movie with that title, but you never know. It might be real. I don't know. I feel like they're not real just because they don't sound real, but stranger things have happened.
And we know Eywa is the guiding force and deity of Pandora in the Na'vi. And the Na'vi believe that Eywa acts to keep the ecosystem of Pandora in a perfect equilibrium. So, what would be the journey to Eywa? What is the title again?
Quest for Eywa.
The Quest for Eywa. So I guess Eywa puts them on a quest to restore the equilibrium of the planet. How exciting for a blockbuster.
Yeah, I mean, we also do have Star Wars The Force Awakens, which is also incredibly vague summation of also an all-encompassing force. So maybe it'll be similar to that. It's just, I don't know. I also think that these titles are pretty lame, and the Seed Bearer is just like ripe for some dirty jokes.
Yeah. No, everybody in our Slack channel was kind of going off on these titles, and I did, chime in. I did mention The Force Awakens because, if we had just seen Star Wars A New Hope, and, I came and told you, 30 years from now, there's going to be, the 4th film in the Star Wars saga is going to be called Star Wars The Force Awakens. I think I would have made fun of that back then.
I don't know. That sounds more real to me. Also, I'd be like, oh my God, time traveler, tell me more about the future. But
I can only tell you about the 4th Star Wars film. That's all I can tell you.
Yes, you should have warned us about who would win the election instead of telling us about the Star Wars title.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I don't know. I mean, The Force Awakens sounds real to me, but maybe it just sounds real to me because it is real, so I don't know.
Are either of you two excited for the Avatar sequels?
Not particularly. I have maintained a level of apathy towards this franchise since I first saw it, and I am proud to say it has not changed since then.
I'm actually kind of surprised that you did not enjoy this movie because, it's so, I feel like knowing you, HT. It's very kind of a fairy tale. It's almost like an anime in a way. It's
But also, it just reminded me of how much better Hayao Miyazaki's Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind was. And I was like, oh, Hayao Miyazaki already did this multiple times. And so I was just like, just watch anime instead. So I enjoyed the experience of it. I thought it was really beautifully rendered technology. But the story and the movie itself kind of fell flat for me.
I know the story is a little simplistic, but I don't know. I really liked Avatar. Seeing it in 3D, I think the problem is it's not a movie you can really watch in 2D. It's kind of made for the 3D. And I've watched it. I have the 3D Blu-ray. I've watched it on my projector. It's actually probably, aside from Gravity, the only Blu-ray I've watched multiple times because it's just so breathtaking. And I don't know, guys. I just think you can't... you got to trust James Cameron when it comes to sequels. He has a great track record with sequels, right?
That is very true. That is very true. I'm not betting against James Cameron by all means. I think that he is, historically, he has been on the right side of movie history, I guess you would say. So he's never not had a bad, terrible movie yet. Bad sequel yet. So, I'm sure these movies will be great. And I'm sure I'll like be eating crow once I do see these films. But for now, I'm just not quite excited.
Chris, I do want to ask you, I know that you're not a fan of Avatar. What do you think happened in popular culture? Because, this is the biggest grossing film of all time. The most amount of people that saw any film saw this movie. And I remember when it came out, people were enjoying this movie. And then there was this big backlash, and it seemed like now, everybody just likes to make fun of Avatar. What happened?
I don't know. I think, I will say I don't hate Avatar. I just think it's kind of if you strip away the special effects, there's really nothing to that movie. And I feel like it was such a huge hit because it was this cultural moment where it was oh, you have to see Avatar. Everyone has to see Avatar, because at the time 3D movies weren't as prevalent as they became. Not that 3D was invented by Avatar. 3D has been around for years, but Avatar brought it back. It updated the technology, and that was how the movie was hyped. Oh, it's 3D you've never seen it before. And so everyone was I guess I got to see that. And it kicked off this whole new trend where every Hollywood movie, every blockbuster at least, was, we got to convert this to 3D now. So I feel like
Hollywood taking the wrong lessons again.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so I feel like at the time it was this cultural shift, but I also feel like a lot of people realized after seeing the movie that it's kind of forgettable. I don't think it's a bad movie, but I saw the movie in theaters, and I don't really remember anything about it. I remember one scene where they're standing and there are fire embers, because I remember that looked really cool in 3D, and that's it. I don't remember anything else. So I think the movie is kind of forgettable, and I think that's what's inspired this backlash that it got really hyped up, everyone saw it, and now everyone realizes it's not what it was cracked up to be. Not everyone. There are people of color, of course, who still like it.
It just seems like those people are not vocal. So it's I don't know, it seems like they are non-existent, which is strange. Anyways, let's talk about another sequel that probably shouldn't be happening, and that is Inside Man 2. We have some casting news for this, and even some info on what this could be. Chris, tell us about it.
So Ameen, who has appeared in Sense8, and he was in The Maze Runner, has been cast as the lead in Inside Man 2. And Inside Man, of course, was a 2000 film from Spike Lee. It had Denzel Washington in it, and Clive Owen and Jodie Foster, and it's really good. It's a clever, twisty bank robbery film, and it's also Spike Lee's highest grossing film. It was a huge hit for him. This sequel, it sounds less like a sequel and more like a remake, because none of the characters from the first movie are in it. And the plot is more or less the same. It's about a hostage negotiator who's dealing with a bank robbery, which is what the first movie was about. So it sounds like they're just taking the Inside Man brand, if you could call it that, if this movie even has a brand, and slapping it onto, a bank robbery story. And it's interesting because back in 2006, Spike Lee actually said he was going to make a sequel to the first film. And the original cast was coming back. The screenwriter was coming back. It was going to be a direct sequel. And he couldn't get it funded. Even though Inside Man, the first one, was a huge hit, he couldn't get the funding for it, and he gave up on the idea. And now, years later, it is happening without his involvement. And we're getting this, which, this sort of soft reboot. So it's kind of depressing that Spike Lee, who is a great filmmaker, couldn't get his idea made, and instead they're just making this, whatever this is.
I know that we're oftentimes cynical about what Hollywood is producing, all these, remakes, adaptations, sequels. And I do see a need for us as a culture, as us as beings, like telling the same stories over and over again that kind of, are touchstones for us, like Shakespeare, and I think that's what we're doing with some of these movie remakes. But that said, is anybody really aching for an Inside Man reboot?
I can't imagine it, because Inside Man, I won't give away spoilers if someone hasn't seen this 18-year-old film, but Inside Man was jumping off of already established tropes, because Dog Day Afternoon is a famous bank robbery hostage movie, but what made Inside Man really clever is that it took an established thing and twisted it into something else. And of course, Spike Lee's direction was really good, and to do the same thing but with not without the same cast, without Spike Lee, it's like, what's the point? Why are you doing this? And I guess it is just that brand thing. I guess it's just safer to produce something that's an established title than just try something new, unfortunately.
And now a bit of news that hit last night, and that is that they are making another adaptation of H.G. Wells' classic, The Time Machine, with Leonardo DiCaprio producing, and from the director of It. HT, what do we know?
Yeah, soon after Andy Muschietti was announced to be in talks to develop a Attack on Titan movie, he has signed on for yet another project. He is set to direct a new adaptation of The Time Machine with Leonardo DiCaprio on board as producer. DiCaprio and Jennifer Davidson are producing with DiCaprio's Appian Way Productions. And Arnold Leibovitz, who executive produced the 2002 movie, will remain on board as executive producer.
So it sounds like Andy Muschietti is following Guillermo del Toro on attaching himself to as many projects as possible, and most of them probably won't be made, right?
Yeah, that sounds like he's living up to his mentor's sort of legacy of just signing on to as many things as possible now that he's kind of a rising talent and has a lot of excitement around him, and getting us excited in the process. So we'll see if this actually goes through.
Yeah, my favorite movie of all time is Back to the Future. As a kid, actually, even as an adult, I'm obsessed with time travel. And so I loved H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. I used to read that book, and I used to watch the original movie. There was one that came out, in the 2000s at some point?
Yeah, the 2002 Time Machine with Guy Pearce.
Yeah, that one is not so good. Even though the older one is probably bad in its own ways.
I kind of enjoyed the Guy Pearce one, actually. Although I went in without knowing about the book at all. That was it was my introduction to the story, and it kind of changed the more basic plot elements of the original novella. But it was a fun action adventure, and I still enjoy it in kind of like a campy way.
Chris, what is your relationship with The Time Machine?
I really like that movie Time After Time, in which H.G. Wells and Jack the Ripper come to modern day America, and they have to fight each other. It's a really cool movie. It's got Malcolm McDowell in it and David Warner. And yeah, that movie posits that H.G. Wells didn't just write The Time Machine. He built his own time machine that really worked. And as bad luck would have it, Jack the Ripper stole it and wrote it into the future, and he had to come after him. So I really like that movie. Beyond that, I don't have much of an attachment with the story.
Wasn't there also a movie that featured the time machine in the background of a scene and it disappears as an Easter egg? I vaguely remember this.
I don't know about that one, no.
And I found it. So there is a scene in Steven Spielberg's Gremlins where the father is at this like convention for I guess inventions, and you see the time machine in the background. And he's talking to his son, and when it cuts back, the time machine has been has disappeared. So
I never noticed that. I'll have to look for that when I rewatch Gremlins during Christmas time. That's funny.
I will put a link in the show notes to that. But anyways, I'm interested in this, but I don't necessarily think it's ever going to get made. So who knows? But speaking of sequels that we never thought would ever get made, Ridley Scott is apparently set to direct Gladiator 2.
Yes. Ridley Scott apparently just loves coming back to his older films. He did it with Alien. Now he's doing it with Gladiator. Ridley Scott has been trying to make a Gladiator sequel almost since the original film came out, which was in 2000. And at one point, he commissioned this absolutely crazy screenplay by Nick Cave that I really wish had been made, where Maximus, the Russell Crowe character, goes to hell and then he comes back to Earth, and there's all this supernatural stuff in it. It's this really weird and crazy script that Hollywood obviously never would have made, but I wish they had. And obviously that's not happening. But now just another sequel is happening that focuses on the character of Lucius, who's the nephew of Joaquin Phoenix's character in the first film, but he's grown up now, and I guess he's leading Rome. There's not a lot of detail about it, but we just know that Ridley Scott is finally making this happen in some capacity, and it's happening for some reason.
Does anybody here care about this one?
If they were doing the Nick Cave one, I'd be very excited, but they're not doing that, so no.
Yeah, I really liked the original Gladiator. I thought it had an astounding performance from both Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix, and I don't know why a sequel is happening. I think the IP wars are in full effect now, in which, yeah, like you were saying before, Peter, it's just executives are just jumping on every recognizable title or even less recognizable titles to make a remake of it because it's a safe bet. The only baffling thing here is that Ridley Scott is back to do it, but he just seems like a workhorse. So maybe he's just someone asked him if he wanted to do a Gladiator sequel, and he's like, yeah, sure, why not?
And we were talking about the time machine before. And let's go on to another time traveler, that being Doctor Who, your beloved Doctor Who HD. But it turns out that the Christmas special for Doctor Who has been scrapped for the first time in 13 years.
Yeah. Since the 2005 revival, Doctor Who has been kind of a holiday staple. Every year it has a Christmas special that it airs basically on December 25th almost every year. And it's usually a Christmas-themed story and or a big blockbuster-style event episode in which the BBC just pours tons of money into it, and suddenly the show looks amazing. Not that it doesn't look great now. Well, it looks okay now.
So wait, why are they not doing it this year?
Well, this is based off of a report from the Mirror that reports that Doctor Who writers have, quote, run out of Christmas stories to give a sci-fi twist for. And this is kind of an issue that's been going back since Stephen Moffat's run as showrunner for his last Christmas special, Twice Upon a Time last year. He kind of admitted that I think we have sort of mined and possibly overmined every single story about Christmas in Doctor Who. And even in the last special, they didn't really do a Christmas story. It's just set in the winter with snow and then has like a last minute Christmas twist. But it seems that Chris Chibnall, the current showrunner, has suggested that there will not be a Christmas special, but another special after the season ends its 10-episode runtime this year. So he said at Comic-Con this year, actually, quote, I would definitely think there's another episode after the end of the series. So he carefully avoids saying Christmas special, but it's, according to the Mirror, it could possibly be a New Year's Day special, which is kind of something that Doctor Who has also sort of done before in a two-parter episode that was a Christmas special, but ended up running into the new year during David Tennant's run. So I'm a little sad because I really look forward to the Doctor Who Christmas specials every year. They're a little hokey, they're a little fun, and they often do a little twist off of a familiar Christmas story. One of my favorite Christmas episodes ever, actually, is Doctor Who: A Christmas Carol, which stars Michael Gambon in the guest role as sort of an Ebenezer Scrooge type character, except it's in space. So that's even better. And
Oh, wow.
it's a great episode, actually. I recommend it. It's a good time travel and a emotionally heartfelt episode. So that they're always fun and they're always kind of a staple, but it's kind of a loss that this won't be happening this year, because I would love to see Jodie Whittaker do a Christmas themed episode. But if we still get another special episode after the season finishes airing, I wouldn't be mad about that.
I also think it's funny that, like, usually we see these stories from the Mirror and we're like, that's probably bullshit, but if it's Doctor Who, must be true. Because
Exactly.
the Mirror is, has Doctor Who ever encountered Santa Claus?
Yes, he has.
Really?
In the 2016 special, he was played by, I'm totally just blanking on his name.
Was it Nick Frost?
Nick Frost.
Yes.
Yeah, but he was played by Nick Frost, and it was kind of a sort of dream episode, but it was fun. Yeah, he met Santa Claus, and it was a rollicking good time.
Okay, then I think they have officially run out of ideas for Christmas specials. Let's move on to our last story, and that is the story of a Penny Dreadful, I guess, spin-off show? Is that right, Chris?
It's like a spin-off / sequel, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, tell us about this.
So this series, it's called Penny Dreadful City of Angels, and John Logan, who was the creator and writer of the original Penny Dreadful, is back doing this one too. And other than the title and the showrunner, it sounds like it's going to be a much different show. The original show, of course, was set in Victorian London, and this is going to be set in 1930s Los Angeles. And it's going to deal with, different sort of occult elements and stuff like that. And, I'm hesitantly happy about this because I loved the original Penny Dreadful, but what I loved about it was that gothic Victorian setting, and I loved the cast, especially Eva Green. So if you're doing a new show without any of that stuff, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it, but I am happy that the show is back in some capacity.
So we don't really know what the hook is for this season?
This season is going to deal with Mexican-American folklore, which is kind of cool because, there aren't a lot of shows about that. And, so I'm sure there's a lot you can do with that. And it's going to, blend a historical background with the supernatural story it's telling. But again, I just wish it were the original series, just because I loved that mood it was setting up. But I don't know, maybe they'll find a way to tie it into the original series, because it'd seem weird to call it Penny Dreadful if it's not going to have any connection at all. But it sounds like it's not at this time. Yeah,
that is weird. Although the 1930s Los Angeles setting is intriguing to me. I always like that kind of. That's kind of the era that L.A. Noire, the video game, kind of tackled. So I don't know. I'm kind of interested in that because also, that's like when Hollywood was kind of beginning. The Hollywood boom was happening. So
yeah, it's like a James Ellroy thing. It's like L.A. Confidential, but with horror, which could be pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna move on to our next segment, which is Advice Corner.
It's Chris's Advice Corner. It's Chris's Advice Corner.
And yes, we actually have a theme song created by Love You Wally. So Love You Wally did that theme song. Chris, how does it feel to have a theme song?
It's a little mind blowing. Thank you, Love You Wally, whoever you are. That was no one has ever written a theme song about me before, so it's pretty impressive.
And I think that was inspired by the Adventures of Pete and Pete theme song. It sounds like
it does sound like it. Yeah.
Okay, let's get to our letter for this week, and this is from Your Ball, who lives in Bay Area of California. And he writes in, I'll include the full letter in the show notes, but I'm just going to read the relevant part, that he is an immigrant from a country with a much more relaxed age rating system. And he grew up watching hard R and even NC-17 rated movies such as Shocking Asia at age 12. Hollywood R-rated movies were acceptable in our household with no problems. After coming to the U.S., I've encountered this new to me system of age restriction and parental control. To me, at the time, it didn't seem to make much sense, and I saw it as a dumb thing. However, time went by, and I am a father now. Although my child is not yet old enough to watch movies, I have drastically changed my views towards parental control and movie age ratings. I am definitely not going to show my son a Tinto Brass film at age 10, but I also don't want to be so strict that not watching some R-rated films at a young age can turn him into a fragile scaredy cat. Where does Chris stand on the subject, and how should I proceed with my dilemma? Should I censor the media for my kid and let him decide later in life if he likes that type of entertainment, or should I take my own experience as an example and allow him to watch whatever interests him within moral boundaries, of course? So, Chris, what do you think about this? Like, you aren't a parent yourself, right?
No. Heavens no.
The only children he needs are his 2 dogs.
That's right. Those are my kids.
Yeah. And I feel like after our first entry where we basically advise someone not to go to college, we should probably create a disclaimer at the end of this, like one of those like fast talking disclaimers, like /home does not blah blah blah. Like, what Chris says is, take it with a grain of salt. But okay, Chris.
Yes, this is just advice. This isn't set in stone. You have to make your own decisions. I would say it depends on your child, really. You would know your child and what he, can handle. Some children are more sensitive than others. Some can't take certain things, and that's fine. When I was growing up, my parents didn't stop me from R-rated movies unless they had sex in them. That was where they drew the line. They were fine with like super violent horror movies, but if there was sex, that was a big no-no. Like I really wanted to see Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula in theaters because I was a huge Dracula fan. But that movie has a lot of sexual situations in it, so my parents forbade me from seeing it for a few years until it came out on VHS, and that really bothered me, and I still resent them for it. So,
but you turned out to be a well-adjusted human being.
I wouldn't go that far. No, I really think it boils down to your son. I believe he said it was his son, and what he can handle. I would say, talk to him about it, and be honest. That's what I think is important. Just be honest with your kid and be like, this movie has this and this and this in it. Do you think you can handle it? And, there's always a chance the kid's going to lie and be like, yeah, I can handle that. And they watch it and they're scarred for life. But they'll learn a valuable lesson that way. They'll realize I should never watch this kind of movie again because now I am traumatized. So that's my advice. Traumatize your children, and they'll grow up to thank you for it.
But you never know what a kid is going to get scared at, I remember, my parents kept me away from like violence and sex in movies, but then I remember seeing the Masters of the Universe movie, like the bad one with who was
Dolph Lundgren.
Yes, Dolph Lundgren. And Skeletor haunted my dreams, and that's not even like that bad. Like, I was not bothered by the movies that I saw that had blood or like, really disturbing things. I was scared of this guy in this skull makeup.
It's true. I mean, one of the things that most scared me as a kid is a scene in one of the two Pee Wee Herman movies. I can't remember which one it is, but it's where he gets picked up by Large Marge, which is
that's the first one. That's the Tim Burton.
She's this ghostly trucker, and her face turns all creepy, and that scared the shit out of me. And that's a movie for kids. It's not supposed to be a traumatizing movie, but I remember that just terrified me as a kid. So really, even if you think you're shading your children from something that is advertised as scary, you never know. Like, there's always going to be something that scares them in some way. It's best to, I think it's important to show kids this sort of stuff and, teach them that it's not real. Like, I think that's a thing that a lot of people don't get. Like, the stuff in the movies isn't really happening. And if you can separate the two, you'll be fine.
I'd like to give a little input too. I have two little cousins who I used to babysit. They're about 12 and 6 years old, and my aunt and uncle, they have
and they know all about Doctor Who and Miyazaki.
No, but I have made them watch a few Young Justice, and the Flash episodes. So and Buffy. Oh my gosh, I watched with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, of course, with the older the girl. So that was where we bonded. But their parents tended to screen movies for them before they watch it and make the decision from there, because I do think that the MPA system, the Hollywood rating system, is a little bit arbitrary sometimes when it comes to R ratings. You can't say the word fuck more than once in an R-rated in a movie, and that makes it go rated R. So I think it makes sense for parents to screen them and see what they think is best for kids.
And there's a ton of websites out there that you can look up a film and it will tell you everything from what swear words are said, what sexual situations, what kind of violence, even if there's any animals that, are killed on screen.
Yeah, exactly. And for them, it's I think for them, violence is actually the one that's more kind of they take a hard stance on, because American movies tend to, as opposed to other European movies, for example, go in harder for the violence versus the more sexual scenes in other international films. So for them, sometimes even they will walk a line. For Hunger Games, which my cousin was a really big fan of, they were a little bit reluctant to let them show it, but then they decided to anyways. So it depends. And I also agree with Chris in terms of just exposing them to more movies younger, and not trying to helicopter them so much when it comes to anything that's a little bit scary, because it's not good either to just censor them too much when they're young, because it deprives them a lot of being able to critically watch movies and distinguish reality from fiction, which is might be a problem too with even media literacy today in the news. I'm turning into a political thing, of course, but yes.
No, it's true. There are adults who don't know how to do this right today. Yeah. So teach them young before they grow up to be the people who make CinemaSins videos.
And H2 reminds me that when I was younger, I used to babysit my two nieces, and I would show them movies that they weren't supposed to watch, like Jurassic Park and Independence Day. And I would fast forward through the scary parts, and I thought that was okay. And then later on, I would get yelled at by my sister, because they were having nightmares about aliens and dinosaurs. So, yeah, I don't know. If you're living in the same house, you should probably make decisions that won't keep you up at night because of the nightmares. Okay, that's probably wrong. I don't know. I pretty much agree with Chris here. I think you just gotta kind of figure it out. You gotta figure you eventually have to show them a scary movie of some kind, maybe something like Amblin-esque, like Gremlins or something. E.T. E.T. has some disturbing moments, and I think you'll get an indication from that if they're having nightmares or.
Oh my God, E.T. is terrible. That scene where he dies is so upsetting. He's all white. It's awful. It's horrifying.
It is. And there's a lot of cursing in that movie too, more than you would expect for what's a PG-rated children's film.
Yeah, you can get away with a lot more back then. Back in the old days.
So I'm just wondering, Chris, would you show a 10-year-old The Raid?
Man, I don't know. I maybe it depends. Because the raid is so, the violence is so like cartoonish that I feel like it's not as bad. Like I wouldn't show a 10-year-old like.
I wouldn't show the 10-year-old the raid. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Subtitles.
Oh yes, they don't want to read. Well, you can show them the dubbed
version.
version.
To read that fast. Oh, and maybe I'm being mean to 10-year-olds. I'm sure they can read very fast.
No, they're stupid.
Kids don't want to watch subtitles.
Yeah. I think it's too. That'd be fine, but if it was like, I wouldn't show them like Cannibal Holocaust or something like that. Something where the violence is a lot more realistic and a lot more brutal. Because the raid to me, even though it's like wall-to-wall violence, none of it seems real. Like everyone's defying gravity in that movie. So I feel like you could separate the reality from the fiction from that.
Yeah, I think for me, language isn't a problem. Sexual situations would probably be an issue. I guess I would be most like your parents. And I wouldn't really care about violence as long as the kids could understand that it's not real. I don't know. I guess that's like that's typical, right? Like that's like Americans are very like, let's not show them sex, but violence is okay.
That's like our puritanical roots where sex is forbidden, but everything else is fine.
I was going to say.
Okay. Well, I'm sure there's tons of parents out there listening to this who are up in arms.
Yes.
They're ready to write us emails over our bad parenting advice. But and you can do that at peter@slashfilm.com. You can also submit your letter if you want some life advice from Chris. You can send it to that email as well. That's peter@slashfilm.com. And please leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention the letter on the air. Chris, where can we find more of your work online?
I'm at slashfilm.com every day, and I'm on Twitter at Evangelista413.
HJ, where can we find you?
You can also find me at slashfilm.com every day, and I'm on Twitter at HTranBuoy.
You can find all the stories we've talked about today in the show notes and on slashfilm.com. I'll also link to that Time Machine appearing in Gremlins clip. Slashfilm Daily is published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to peter@slashfilm.com. And please go to our iTunes page. Give us a 5-star rating, a glowing review, and tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you on Monday. Do you
I
think we gave some very even-handed advice.
Yeah, I think it was fine. We didn't say anything bad. Maybe I'm wrong.
What horror movies do you think would be okay to show a 9-year-old?
Oh my God, I don't even know. I can't even remember like what I was like when I was 9. I don't know. Like you could show them like the Monster Squad. I would say that's fine because like that's kind of adult because it has like cursing in it, but it's also clearly made for younger audiences, so that would be fine. Maybe like Scream. I don't know.
Scream, really? That has like knife like going through people and very bloody.
Kids these days are tough. They have to be tough for this hard world.
Horrible world.
Yeah, they can take it.